Japan was an imperial nightmare. So they colonized Korea, colonized Taiwan,
Right.
colonized China. They brought a lot of those people over to Japan as slave labor. And then when the war ended, GHQ, the Americans were like, you can't arrest these people. You leave them alone for the
Right.
time being. And so they were like, hey, Japan, payback time. So they started running the black markets. They started creating gangs. Police couldn't touch them. So these Yakuza who came back, especially in Tokyo and Kobe, sort of formed the sort of vigilante groups, and they sort of took back power. A year passed. The police were empowered to deal with the foreigners. And they stayed, running and the police sort of like, okay, we owe you one.
Right.
And also the thing that they did was very smart. They went to these Korean gangs and Taiwanese gangs, and they said, you guys are good businessmen. Why don't you work with us? Why don't we work together? I mean, you don't, the police can come down on you like a load of bricks, but we recognize your power. It's a meritocracy. If you'll pledge your loyalty to the Oyabun, which is like the father figure, you're welcome. So there was lots of mergers and acquisitions.
Right.
Which is why actually these days 30% of the Yakuza are Korean Japanese. There's another 30% that belong to what were called the Burakumin. So Japan used to have an outcast class. Japan sort of had a caste system. And the people who worked in dealing with slaughtering animals or leather works or unclean jobs were considered untouchables. And, the Yakuza don't discriminate. So that also became a place where they were welcome. I mean, I think that's, pretty standard where all of the world, a lot of organized crime groups begin because you have a marginalized
That's right.
community and they welcome them and let them, rise up according to their power.
Yeah, and they start out of some, like all crime, they start out of some sort of economic disadvantage.
Yeah.
Right? So you look at the Italian-American mafia here and the Jewish mob and the Irish mob, like they started because they were packed like sardines in these little neighborhoods right here, and everyone shunned them in America, and so they did this.
I have an uncle who was allegedly Meyer Lansky's right-hand man.
Who was your uncle?
We just don't talk about it in the family. You
Well,
can
we
look
talk
it up.
about it
No,
now.
we're not talking about it here.
Well, you can't just bring that up on the podcast.
I can.
That's like saying he was the right hand of like the god of organized crime.
Allegedly.
Like Meyer Lansky was allegedly ahead of the Jewish mob.
Allegedly head of the Jewish mob. People have said many things about my uncle. He's just a nice guy. That's all.
Okay. All right.
Okay. But
Can we Google that? Jake Aldestein's uncle, Meyer Lansky. But keep going.
Okay. So the Yamaguchi-gumi, which is easiest to explain because it's the biggest. I mean, it's been the biggest for a long time. At one time, they had 40,000 members. That was founded in 1915. So it's been around for over 100 years. It started as a kind of labor union on the Kobe docks and then moved to extortion and protection, loan sharking. And then when the war ended, Taoku Kazuo, who is called the godfather of godfathers, was like, okay, we've kept the peace here. We have all these young people just out of, all these soldiers who are just back from the war. Let's go into business. Like, let's, and he told his people, he told his members, we're going, of course we're going to run the black markets, and of course we're going to engage in illegal things and collect protection money, but it's also important for us to have a legitimate business. So the Yamaguchi-gumi is actually a corporation. They have this huge chunk of real estate in Kobe, and you can get the real estate deed for that property, and it's owned by a corporation with the members of the organized crime group on there as listed, and they are supposedly running parking lots and golf club management and other assorted activities.
Which they might actually be doing that.
But they might actually be doing.
But it's all the stuff behind it.
They ran one of Japan's largest talent agencies for many years, Kobe Genosha. In addition to that, they had construction companies and other companies. And the Korean group that they took over, the Yanagawa-gumi, in Osaka, set up not only construction companies and entertainment companies, they took a chunk from every single business in the area, including people who were like selling, meat skewers on the street.
Oh, they're going after everybody.
But everybody paid. That's, and that was kind of their business model. I mean, it got so, and the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, which has been ruling Japan since the 50s, almost uninterrupted from maybe a period of 2009 to 2012, they were out of power. That was also funded by a Yakuza associate, Kodama Yoshio, and Abe's grandfather, who was a war criminal, Kishino Bosuke, who also was heavily in debt to the Yakuza. I mean, so when you have your leading political party founded by the Yakuza, you can see why they are sort of tolerated for many years.
Tied and tied.
Tied and tied.
Absolutely. So you get onto this beat now, post-World War II, you're on this 50 years later, so they are very well entrenched.
So they're very well entrenched, but I started as a reporter in 1993. 1992 was the first time that Japan actually put anti-organized criminal laws on the books. They were called the Boryokudan Taisaku-ho.
What precipitated that? Like, what made them finally do it?
After the bubble economy had collapsed and the banks went to start collecting the bad debts and the Yakuza were heavily involved in that real estate boom, a couple of bankers got killed. And the police were like, this is a bad optic.
Yeah.
Like the live and let live days, maybe not so good. And around this time, Itami Juzo, who's a really great film director, he makes really dark comic films, he made a movie called Minbo no Onna, which is the English title is The Gentle Japanese Art of Extortion.
Oh. And
it was a sort of how-to manual of how to deal with the Yakuza when they try and pilfer you and rob you and cheat you and make your life hard.
Just say no.
No, it was more like this. It was more like how to tape their conversations, how to use the law on your behalf to put them out of business. And then the message of the movie was if you fight against the Yakuza, you can win. And you shouldn't be paying them off. And
was that good advice?
Well, Godo Gumi, which was lampooned in the film.
Toothpick guy.
Toothpick guy.
Is that the one that put the hit on you?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So 5 of his guys, of course on their own, right? No orders, right?
Yeah, they would never talk to him.
And because, because I'm sure because Godo always claimed.
He's a legitimate businessman.
He's a legitimate business. And in his biography, he said, I never asked him to do it. But of course, I was glad they did it because he was an unpleasant man who made fun of us.
Right.
So they went to his house. And as he was coming out of his house, they grabbed him and they cut up his face very slowly so it would leave scars. And the message that they were trying to say was, guess what? If you try and resist us, it's not going to go so smoothly.
Let's put a smile on that face.
Oh, yeah. That's a very good impression. They weren't so creative with the carving, but so that made the police be like, okay, now we really have to clamp down on you guys. So when I started, they were beginning to enforce these very weak laws. My first year, I wasn't actually assigned to organized crime. I was sort of a general police reporter. But we were doing this bizarre case of a husband and wife serial killer, Sekine Gen and his wife Hiroko, who were running a very, a boutique pet shop that specialized in exotic pets.
Okay.
And they were selling pets for $50,000, rare breeds.
Like actual pets.
Yeah, like an Alaskan Malamute or an ocelot or some weird pet.
I thought this was more sinister, but go ahead.
But sometimes they would cheat their customers. And so when the customer would say, I'm going to go to the police, because you sold me a dog that can't produce offspring or whatever, they'd kill them.
Oh.
They'd kill them and they'd chop off the meat, which they'd probably fed to the animals, and then they'd burn the bones and they would disappear. So the Saitama police noticed that, around these 2 people, 10 people had disappeared over the last 10 years. And now there were 4 people missing. So they were launching an investigation. We knew that they were investigating. And my boss, Yamamoto-san, said, okay, Jake, everybody's getting assigned a victim to do a profile of them and a background to gather information. So when the police bust this case open, we're ready to roll. And he's like, you are in charge of this Yakuza boss who was an associate of Sekine Gen named Endo and his driver, Wakui, who disappeared. So you need to find out everything about them. What was their last day on Earth like? Why would Sekine want them dead? That's your job. And so, I tried knocking on the door of the office because it's not hard to find the office, but some very angry young Yakuza came and chased me out. There was a taxi park nearby, so I just hopped back in the taxi. It's very hard to run in a suit. Especially shiny shoes.
Yeah.
I started wearing sneakers after that most of the time.
There you go. Air Jordans?
No, whatever was available. You didn't get paid so well as a reporter. And I made friends with so there was, the homicide squad was investigating this, but they suck at dealing with Yakuza issues. So they had someone from the organized crime task force sent over. That was Sekiguchi Chiaki. This really hot, really great detective, really good at interrogating Yakuza. They sent him over to be part of the force. And
so are they just setting up outside the pet store every day?
No. They're like, they're trying to find some other separate, easier charge to arrest him on. Because this is like, Japanese police investigations of homicide are almost always begin with the arrest for something that is not homicide. Let me explain why that is. We're on a tangent, but might as well.
No, this is good.
Okay.
Go for it.
If you are arrested in Japan, you can be held for 23 days before you're indicted, and during which time you do not have access to your lawyer.
Oh, boy.
So if you want to get someone to confess to a crime or you want to browbeat them, you need something to grab them for, and a small criminal charge, even a traffic violation, minor fraud. The classic one is you arrest them first for improper disposal of a body. You interrogate them for 23 days. Then you get them to confess to the murder. Then you...
improper disposal? You talking about like if they were eating the dogs or something, or the humans they were killing?
Or like you left a body somewhere. Like you diced up a body. Like, okay.
But that would mean they killed them, right?
No. Doesn't necessarily mean they killed them. The initial charge is almost always shitaiki, which is throwing away a body, or improper disposal of a body, which is a crime. And they hold you for that 23 days, and they hope that you confess. Because Japan does have a 99% conviction rate.
Oh, that sounds very democratic.
Well, but the trick to that is the prosecutors drop 50% of almost every case they get. So they will only take a slam dunk case, even in murders. So if you don't confess, and then the prosecutor has to go like, oh my God, I might actually lose this case. Like I could be one of the 1%.
Right.
One of the 1% of losers. They may drop it. So they want that confession. They want that confession. They want the 23 days to get you to fess up. So then they rearrest you for murder this time, and another 23 days go by.
So your boy was called in, or a guy was called in to be on this task force.
So he's like, you're going to talk to the Yakuza. You're going to find out what's happened to this guy, where he disappeared, why Sekine might have killed him. And so another reporter knew his address. So they gave me the address, and I went to the house many times trying to talk to him. Like, a lot of being a police reporter is, what is the term we used to use? Otoko geisha. It's like being a male geisha. Like you're trying to get in the good graces of these cops, hoping that they will leak you some kind of information so you will have a scoop, right?
There was a movie called like Memoirs of a Geisha. What was the concept there again? Like what's a geisha?
A geisha is just an entertainer that
Like
highly skilled in the arts. No, not a hooker. Most of the time, conversationalist, entertainer.
Got it.
Makes people feel good about themselves. Skilled in the Japanese arts.
Right. Okay. Now I get it.
So when they call you like a male geisha, right? You're chumming up with the cops. You're kind of bribing them with like the Yomiuri Shimbun owned a baseball team, so it's like, hey, would you like some tickets to the game this weekend? I just happen to have a couple on me.
Gotcha.
And I was making no headway, and then I showed up once in the summer, and I had brought some ice cream because his little girls kept coming to the door, even though his wife was lying to me and say he wasn't home. And I was like, okay, look, I got this ice cream. It's gonna melt. You guys eat it. And like I left it there, and then he came out. And he's like, okay, come in, just come in. And I think this is also in the TV series. He didn't call me by my name at first. He just called me Yomi-san, like the name of my newspaper. People do that in Japan. They refer to you as like your job position and not your name.
Got it. Wow.
So I had like a boss above me, like I guess it would be like a junior executive or senior executive or something. We just called him like senior executive, right? It's pretty weird, but it'd be like, oh, senior executive. Right. And so he would call me as like Yomi-san, like sort of slang for my newspaper. But from him, from him as we were looking at this case and trying to figure out what happened to Endo. I mean, I spent so much time like looking into this guy's life and his friends and associates.
That's the Yakuza guy?
The Yakuza guy.
Got it.
He had a wife, of course, and he also had a mistress who's working at a hostess bar.
Nice.
I ended up dating his mistress. I think in the book, I didn't say it was the mistress directly because there were circumstances at the time the book was released that I was like, this could put her in a tough spot.
She went from a Yakuza boss to a reporter.
Well, I mean, he was clearly dead.
Yeah.
I did have this confrontation with someone in his organization who knocked on the door. Like we went while we were banging once, and he's like, "What are you doing? Like you're screwing. You're screwing like the boss's girl. We should kill you." I mean, he didn't say we'd kill you. He was very angry, and I was absolutely defiant. I was like, "Excuse me, like your boss, your underboss is dead. He's been killed by Sekine again. It's an absolute certainty. He's never coming back, and I am taking care of his woman. You should thank me."
Yeah, he had a 2-inch cock.
No, apparently he had a huge cock. That's what she said.
Oh, we're getting canceled for this one. It's okay.
We can't get canceled for it. I mean,
it's all right.
That was a fun and exciting relationship until I realized that she was dissolving meth in her lubricant to make the sex better. And I was like...
She was doing, whoa.
Meth is a big deal in people working in the sex industry, right? And she would dissolve meth in her lubricant. So when we're having sex, because it's probably not the best way to ingest meth, but I imagine through vaginal tissues, it's pretty quickly absorbed.
That's a thing?
That's a thing.
Oh my God.
This is a disputed thing. People say, "You're full of shit." I'm like, no, look it up, man. It's a real thing.
So she was putting meth in the lube.
Meth in the lube. I was getting like a contact high. And then when I saw her doing it once, like, what is that shit you're putting in the lube? And she explained what it was. And I was like, that is unacceptable. I was like, hey, I kind of did like a baby. It's, baby, it's me or the meth. And it's like, it's the meth.
She chose the meth.
She also was, had hooked up with another Yakuza boss who made a lot more money than I did. I mean, I don't think this was true love. But,
right. Yeah, I wasn't getting that sense.
But it was a relationship of convenience at the time.
So this guy had that mistress and the wife, and you were learning everything about him, apparently working overtime.
His mailbox became very overstuffed, and and sometimes mail would fall on the floor, and I would pick that up because once it's on the street, it's fair game.
It's fair game.
It's fair game.
Really?
Yeah.
It's legal.
It's legal.
In Japan, that's legal.
If it's on the street, it's anybody's property.
What kinds of things would you find?
I find like angry postcards from people and debts that he owed and letters like, "Dude, where are you?" kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Companies that he owned, because he's successful Yakuza. He has like front companies, sometimes legitimate companies, sometimes not legitimate companies. Actually, it was nothing that was very useful.
And you're trying to figure out if dog store owner is
killed this guy, right?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm getting to know this weird cast of characters involved in this. And at one point, I figured out. My guess is that Endo figured out that Sekine had killed a couple of his customers and was blackmailing him. And that seemed to be the reason that he was killed. And meanwhile, as I'm trying to see what's happening with this investigation, Sekiguchi-san, who took a liking to me, and I mean, he was a very, very down-to-earth cop, sort of worked his way up to the top. I'd show up in my suit, and he and his family would be in matching tracksuits, and we're going for a run, up in the hills. Come with us, and I'm like, okay. So he's like, okay, you're a reporter, and he started kind of teaching me the ropes of okay, here's how you talk to people, here's how you get people to confess, here's how organized crime works, here are the groups. He's like, you need to know the structure, the 3 tiers.
How good's your Japanese at this point?
It's not bad. Because the written language is such a nightmare. Look at this.
Yeah, it's right to left reading. That throws me off.
Japan has 2 syllabaries, different from an alphabet because the sound is the symbol, and then it has these kanji, which they took from Chinese, but they have Japanese readings and they have Chinese readings. So sometimes one kanji can be read many different ways depending upon what's before and after it. So I was, because as a newspaper reporter, you have to be able to read and write, of course. I was so focused on that, my listening and my speaking weren't very good. So it's a little bit like being sort of deaf mute. Because the first year, there would be a press conference, and I'd be like, I don't understand what's going on. I'm like, I need to stall until they give me the press release, and then I'll be sure that I'm doing the right thing. So it was a great education in the Yakuza and how the police and the Yakuza have this sort of adversarial but almost friendly relationship. So, the year goes by, the case breaks, Sekine is arrested. After the first year, most people are sent to like little mini offices to cover local news, to cover a wide variety of things. And Yamamoto-san, my boss, came to me and said, like, okay, you're moving to the police beat proper. You're going to be covering the prefectural police, and you're going to be covering Organized Crime Task Force 1 and 2, theft, and public security.
Are you thinking about like how dangerous though at this point? Because now you know about the Yakuza, how dangerous it could be to potentially.
Well, because I'm thinking, no, at this point, right, my interaction with them is like, okay, I got chased by them once, right? But I'm just talking to the cops. I'm not like talking to these people. It wasn't until my second year, our like way into my first year, that I actually had a sit down with an actual Yakuza boss. And then I realized, like, okay, now we're getting a little more involved than most reporters do. I know reporters who've covered the Organized Crime Task Force for years who would probably never sat down with the Yakuza in their entire lives. They just write what the police feed them.
But you could still end up dead doing that if you write the wrong thing that they don't like.
Well, the Japanese mafia, they're not like the Mexican mafia, so they're not going to kill a reporter. That brings on too much heat. Really?
Okay.
I mean, you really have to piss them off to do that. For that to do that, I've known one or two reporters who have managed to do that.
And you got a hit put on you.
Well, and I have had a couple dust ups. The worst was with this guy. I wrote it up in Tokyo Noir with one of my sources who was in the middle of a meth psychosis, and I said something that set him off. And it just turned into this nasty, uncivilized, undignified brawl.
Like American style or more karate?
Like no, nothing. No, that would be Kagui. It's like, oh, I'm, what's on the table? Here's an ashtray. I'm going to hit you in the head with the ashtray.
Oh wow. You went straight back to fucking high school again.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if I saw it coming, but I didn't see it coming. And
he hit you with an ashtray.
No, he just punched me first, and then I think we were on the floor, and he kicked me in the head, and then I'm like grabbing. I mean, I threw things at him.
And he's on meth. Wow.
And so, I think at some point I realized that if I kept hitting his knee, he would only have one leg, and then he would have limited mobility, and then I could hurt him enough that I could walk away, which is how it ended.
Wow.
But,
don't get into a dust up with this guy. Yeah. Shit.
No, I mean, it was. It sounds better than it was. We were both horribly injured, but I think But I was the one that left on my own 2 feet, so that's better, right?
There you go. Yeah.
But the ironic thing is that this is my source, right? I mean, this is a guy who's given me some great info and intel, and it's not like it's personal. It's like he's crazy because he's on so much meth that he thinks the world is out to get him.
That's right.
So, and if I turned him in, then not only have I betrayed a source.
You can't turn him in.
I can't turn him in.
You beat him too.
Yeah.
That's enough.
So we eventually made peace over that. I as the years go by and I get older, like Wolverine and Logan, I heal as quickly. I definitely avoid any possibility of a violent encounter with these guys. And I got one friend we went to college together, and I mean his story is incredible. That would be a great show. But he's basically went to work for a really big Japanese company and got recruited by the Yakuza to run one of their front companies.
Oh, shit.
And they were kind of like, you're really smart. Like, we need you. Like, look at you. We can tell, when you go out with this drinking and stuff, you like the good life. You like the women and the cars. It's like, come work for us. Well, what you're in a company.
And he knew what it was.
And he knew what it was. And he took
did
it.
Wow.
He took it, and then the company went legit. Disney bought the company. I'm not making this up.
God.
Disney bought the company, so he's working for Disney. And, and his boss was like, more power to you. You go on. I'm proud of you. Good work. And, he gave me a card to let me get into Disneyland for free for a year. I was like, thanks, dude.
Courtesy of the Yakuza.
Well, I mean, he wasn't in the Yakuza anymore.
Right.
But somebody ratted him out, so he went back to the organization.
Oh, they ratted him out.
Yeah. Someone was like, yeah, this guy used to be in the Yakuza.
Whoa.
I mean, and, and
what a story.
I mean, he still kind of every now and then shows up in the newspaper in a really strange place. I'm like, dude, man, that's you, right? And he's like, oh, yeah.
Don't worry about it.
But we went out we had dinner at the Foreign Correspondents Club a couple months ago because my girlfriend Jessie was like, and Jessie's a tough woman. I mean, she's a black belt in Kyokushin karate, and she's like 180 centimeters, so she's like 6 feet tall, taller than me. I wouldn't tangle with her, but she's
she Japanese?
She's Japanese Brazilian.
Oh, what a combo!
Yeah,
whoa,
lovely combo. She's a lovely, wonderful woman and very strong. And she's like, "You're not having any Yakuza over to the house. Absolutely not. I don't care if you went to school with them, you're friends with them. It's like, do not bring that trouble here." And
I feel like she'll just beat the shit out of him.
Well, she might, but she's also like, you have avoided that stuff for like 3 years now. Stay out. I'm like, okay. So we had dinner, and he was like, it's like, man, my Oyabun, he's gonna be like the number 2. I could set up an interview with you, man, because his boss is rising in the organization. Yeah. And I was like, no, thank you. And he's like, what do you mean, no, thank you? And I was like, this is a big guy. Like, you'd have an exclusive interview with this big Yakuza boss. And I said, there's no plus for me in this. And I have interviewed a lot of Yakuza bosses. I have written a book about the history of the Yakuza where, it's interviews and the stories of Yakuza bosses of the last Yakuza. And I said, he's not going to tell me exactly how they really make the money, and he's not going to be straight up with me because he can't. And if anything goes wrong, or the higher-ups don't like it, then I got a world of aggravation and anger to deal with. There's no plus side. I've done it before. And I'm like, thank you. It's a generous offer, but I'm not interested. And then he was like, well, when are you going to have me over to the house, man, to meet your chick? And I'm like, I'm never having you over to the house. When you retire from the organization, which you should because you're like 56, dude, and, the future is not good. You were imprisoned for like 23 days. You're lucky they dropped the charges. When you leave, I'd love to have you over to the house. You have a fascinating story. We could write it up. But until then, and I are, we're going to meet in public places if we meet at all, and not going to interview your boss, and not even writing about the Yakuza anymore unless it's something that's very public that everybody already knows.
Yeah. What year is this, approximately?
This conversation we had?
Yeah, like the last year or so?
This year.
Yeah. All right, so very recently. So we had left off, though, when it was after the pet store owners got arrested and everything, and you got put on the beat, basically covering this full time. Not in the Connecticut of Japan, though, anymore, right?
No, still in the Connecticut of Japan.
Still in the Connecticut.
Still in the Connecticut of Japan. And my boss was like, and I was like, I kind of wanted to cover homicide or maybe white collar crimes, because those were kind of like, you made your career at the newspaper if you covered those areas and you had some scoops. And he was like, Aldestein, first of all, you suck at numbers. White collar crimes, out of the question. He's like, the homicide guys, xenophobic, don't like you. And he said, but organized crime members, 30% of them, they're gaijin like you. So them. They'll get along with you.
Right.
And the cops, because you're an oddball, and the cops in the organized crime group, are almost imperceptible from the actual Yakuza that they deal with. They're weird, and you're weird. So it's a perfect match. You'll be like a fish in water. And he was right. I mean, it was such a good match. I did so well covering that section that even when I was sent to another office to cover like local politics and local affairs, I still covered the organized crime unit, which was unprecedented, to leave the police beat and still be in charge of one police division.
Whoa. And so how long were you on that?
I was on that for 4 years. Then they put me on prefectural politics.
What does that mean?
So prefecture is like a state. So I covered state politics. And guess what happened when I went to cover state politics? Corruption scandal involving the Yakuza. So what did I cover?
There you go.
Same thing.
Keeps coming back to
Keeps
it.
coming back. 99, I got transferred to the head office in Tokyo. They put me in charge of the 4th district, which is Kabukicho, the red light district, full of Yakuza. I did that for 2 years. I had some time as a features reporter doing various investigations. Then 2002 to 2005, back on the Metropolitan Police Department beat covering.
Basically.
But covering organized crime and vice.
So what do you mean by vice?
Vice isn't always run by organized crime. And Japan has very gray laws about
really?
The sex industry. I'll simplify it for you. In Japan, any sexual service other than vaginal penetration can be openly bought and sold. It's not a crime.
Yeah, I was looking in this magazine. It looks like it.
So that means anal sex, frottage, hand jobs, blow jobs, all that stuff is legal. The only thing that you cannot buy and sell is vaginal penetration. And because the anti-prostitution laws were actually designed to prevent women from being sold into sexual slavery or being trafficked, there's no punishment for the male customer or the female prostitute as long as she's not openly soliciting on the street. Mm-hmm. The only people that can be punished are the brothel owner or the pimp.
Whoa. Okay. So you're covering this for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And you're still covering Yakuza too.
Yeah, but
this is another side of it.
I think vice and organized crime was two and a half years on the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. That was interesting because I also would cover for public security, which is kind of like, spies and that things as well. So when Nakamura-kun would be on vacation, I would have to cover like public security section. And when I would go to their press conferences, because I'm a foreigner, as soon as I walked in, everyone would like turn over everything on their desk, like, because like we could be a spy because it's not Japanese. It was so awkward.
Oh man. So you never really like get fully ingrained over there. There's still, you're always going to run into some form of a place where it's like you're a total outsider.
Yeah, but I would say that with the organized crime task force in Saitama, I got along with those guys.
Yeah.
So I got along with so well that I would be invited to farewell parties and stuff.
Oh wow,
it was nice.
Yeah, good for you. Now this has now been effectively well over a decade at this point of you being in Japan. Was there ever a thought during that time of like, oh, I'd like to come back to America or leave here? Or were you just going with the flow?
Well, got married. That didn't work out so well, but we had 2 lovely kids, and I realized at some point that they didn't speak any English.
Oh, none.
They barely spoke English because I'm never home. The Japanese work week for a reporter on the police beat, I was working 80, 90-hour weeks.
Oh, wow.
Honest to God, when I started, started a job that wasn't being a police reporter, and I was like, I'm not working for 80 hours a week. I was just like, nothing seems hard in comparison.
Yeah. That's crazy though that your kids didn't speak like any of it.
So we decided to go to law school. My parents were like, "We'd love to have you back, son. Help put you through law school." I had paid off a house in the United States.
What years was
2005.
Okay.
And I was having health issues because the work environment at the newspaper was tough. One of my colleagues had committed suicide. Also,
what happened there?
She was a really good reporter who was critical of the way we were handling coverage of the way we were covering mental health issues, like mental health people were a danger to society, based on one case. And she got demoted, and then they told her that she would never work again as a reporter, and she killed herself.
Oh my God, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's. I am very happy. I'm very grateful to the Yomiuri Shimbun for giving me a job, but there were problems with that company. And another thing, as I could see, is that the National News Department had always sort of had a certain amount of independence because the newspaper is very, very right wing. I mean, it's the newspaper equivalent of Fox News. I mean, there's no doubt that we are on the side of the ruling party.
Yeah.
But I could also see that there was a huge clampdown on our ability to report independently. And honestly, if you've done 12 years at a newspaper and most of that has been on the police beat, it's just like the same story with different people.
Yeah.
I mean,
wears on you.
Yeah, well, and it wears on you, and there's not that much to learn. I mean, maybe you get faster or write better, but it's not like, not a huge change. So I went back and I was applying to law school, and I got into a good law school, and then, as these things do at the same time, someone reached out to me from the U.S. State Department, and they were like, when you were a reporter, your reporting on human trafficking issues was great. Your contributions to the the annual Trafficking in Persons report were really appreciated, because I sort of did that on the side. I'd be like, okay, the Japanese government, and the National Police Agency is telling you this, but this is how it really works on the streets.
Oh, wow. Guys, if you're still watching this video and you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please take 2 seconds and go hit it right now. Thank you.
And they said, we have funding for a major study of human trafficking in Japan, and we'd like you to head it up.
The State Department's telling you this.
And they said, but in order for this to work, we have to have some plausible deniability, because you and I both know what's the fastest way to get information about organized crime. And I'm like, I see what you're talking about. So, and they explained to me, we're going to fund this project through a nonprofit organization. They're going to hire this firm in D.C., which is going to hire you.
Whoa.
And I was like, you can find the report on online. Shared Hope International. Demand is the name of the report. And so I did that. Because I was like, they gave me the spiel. There will always be law school, but you have a chance to really follow up on the reporting work you've done. You have no restrictions on how you do it, and it could make a very positive impact in an area where you clearly feel is important and benefit many people. And I was like, and the money is great. I'm like, and I was like, I'm in. And while I was working on that story, and writing that report, around 2007, there was this police officer at the Kitazawa police station who was downloading porn onto his computer through a shared file service called Winnie. Kind of like Napster. Do you remember Napster?
I know it from the movie The Social Network.
Okay. So you share a file, you upload a file, and you download a file. So that was Japan's own homegrown Napster. So this cop, who's not a bad guy.
It was just regular porn.
Some tentacle porn, but
Tentacle? What is that?
Well, like people have squids and stuff on them.
What?
Look it up.
Is that only Japanese?
You know what? Look up tentacle porn.
Like anime? No?
But
like furry kind of stuff, but it's an
slimy
octopus?
kind of stuff.
Oh my God. They're taking the sushi a little too serious over there.
And some anime stuff, but some live action stuff as well. He didn't have very good taste in porn.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
But he accidentally uploads the entire organized crime database, or a huge chunk of it, on the Yamaguchi Gumi that the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department had. And in those files,
where did he upload it?
Onto the network.
Oh my God.
He got fired.
Yeah. I'll say.
but and I'm not very good with computers, but I had covered hacking. So I called up this guy and I'm like, look, dude, I need you to download everything that's on that file server. He's like, done. So I have like 4 gigabytes of information about organized crime organizations, the front companies, their actual addresses, their phone numbers.
Oh my God.
And in there, Goto Tadamasa, who I was pretty sure had gotten liver transplant at UCLA because I'd heard the rumors.
This guy.
Yeah. His whole organization, everyone in his organization, including a list of his mistresses, and his passport numbers, and his family's passport numbers. They were all in that file.
And you're like, Doc City, bitch, let's go.
And I'm like, let's see how you got that liver transplant. And so I put it all together, and I put it all together, and then I put it all together, and I'm like, okay, I'm working on the first draft of Tokyo Vice. I turned it into this Japanese publisher, and I was like, listen, we are going to keep this part under wraps until the book comes out, because this is really going to piss off some people. And unfortunately for me, they had an English division which put a summary of the book on the web, which basically spelled out everything that I knew.
Oh, yeah. Not great.
And when that got out,
He's not happy.
he was not happy because, I mean, you know, Yakuza may not read English overall, but they have people who monitor everything.
Oh, yeah.
I think Yamaguchi is, I mean, it's a huge organization. I wrote an article once about this guy being sued for the death of a real estate broker that his men killed. This happens in Japan. You may not be able to arrest a Yakuza boss for murder, but you can sue him if his underlings kill your people.
So he can't get arrested, but you can sue him.
You can sue him.
Kind of like OJ, like he was let off.
Yeah. Like
Okay.
employer the
Yeah.
term is employer liability.
Right.
And I wrote an article on it, and I explained in the article that, you know, suing Goto Tadamasa for the murder of this real estate broker, Nozaki, made sense, but suing his boss, Tsukasa Shinobu, this guy here, didn't make sense because at the time that these murders took place, he was in Nagoya in solitary confinement. And I was
the
like,
older guy.
the older guy, like the boss of the bosses. I'm like, you know, it's not really fair because obviously he can't give the orders or approve of it because he's in solitary.
Right.
So maybe technically, but really it's kind of a stretch. And I was like, you know, and compared to this guy,
Had to be the toothpick.
and compared to this guy, you know, toothpick guy, and Tsukasa Shinobu was a good Yakuza as Yakuza go. So, I mean, like, you know,
Vito Corleone.
I'm writing it for the Atlantic Wire, so it's a little bit tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
I think it was like the high price of killing someone as a Yakuza boss now. And then I also knew someone who was close to Goto, and I'm like, hey, you know, what is Goto saying about the lawsuit? And he's like, oh yeah, Goto's bitching that, you know, like the old man says he shouldn't have to pay anything because he got kicked out of the Yakuza. And Tsukasa Shinobu, his boss, when he went to jail, Goto put up $10 million for his bail, and he never got paid back. So he should just pay the family the damages from what he owes Goto. Leave him out of it.
Oh, whoa.
So I put this up on, you know, the Atlantic Wire. 6-7 hours go by. I get a call from someone at the top of the Yamaguchi-gumi, like, and they're basically like, we read your article, or like, we read a translation of your article. And they're like, thank you very much for pointing out that the big boss couldn't have been part of the hit and would never have condoned it.
And it must have been Goto. Whoa.
And I'm like, well, you know, it's just the truth. And he's like, this part where you have quote Goto saying like the old man should pay because he owes Goto his bail money, like, is that real? And I'm like, yeah, that's real. And I'm like, did you hear it from Goto himself? I'm like, no, I heard it from a reliable source. I'm like, who's the reliable source? And I'm like, I'm not telling you. And then this guy who I had a fairly cordial relationship with, he was like, can you translate that into Japanese and put it on your shitty blog?
Fuck you, shitty.
And I was like, well, he said kudaranai blog, and kudaranai means like shitty or not so good. And I was like, sure, absolutely, you know, and so I did it. I called him up and I said, okay, it's on the blog. You know, I can send you the link. And he's like, no, why don't you print it out and we'll go pick it up? And I'm like, okay, because some of these guys are really analog.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
real old school.
And I'm like, you know, you can print that out anywhere. It's on the web. And they're like, things disappear from the web. Why don't you just print it out?
Oh my God.
And I'm like, okay, let me tell you my address. They're like, oh no, we know where you live. And I'm like, okay, you know, there's like, I'm sort of under police protection, so could you be a little subtle? And I'm like, could you please not show up in like a Mercedes-Benz in front of the house because this would intimidate the neighbors?
So you were already under police
I was under police protection.
Okay.
And they were like, sure, like where, you know, is there a place to park nearby? And I'm like, yeah, you just go down the hill.
Okay.
So I came up, and I gave him a copy to print out. And then he had like a little portable printer with him and he printed it out again. I don't know why went through this rigmarole. He read it out loud to his boss, and he said, you know, thank you very much. And then called his boss and put me on the phone with his boss, and the boss was kind of like, you know, thank you for writing this. I understand that he has been a problem in your life, and, you know, we appreciate the article and the way you spell things out here, and we can assure you that he's probably not going to be a problem for you anymore. And I'm like, that's great. Thank you very much. I don't need to know anymore. And shortly after that, he moved to Cambodia, and I had a discussion with the local police, and I said, I appreciate these years of police protection, but I think I'm ready to be on my own.
Wait, so how did you initially end up under police protection? Like what precipitated that at the beginning of this? It sounds like that was around like 07.
Oh, that was 2008. Basically, after the contents of the books were released, I heard murmurings that the old man wasn't pleased because he sort of kind of figured out what was going on. And then I was told to come into the National Police Agency, and they said, it appears that there is a contract out on you, so to speak. I don't think they used the word contract. But they said, we're going to put you under police protection. Could you tell us exactly what's going on? And I said, well, you know what's going on. I was trying to write about him getting a liver transplant at UCLA. Mm. And they're like, oh, yes, the one that the FBI did under our nose. Yeah, we weren't very happy about that.
The FBI?
Yeah. Sorry, spoiler alert for people who haven't read Tokyo Vice yet. Goto Tanamasa had a bad liver like many Yakuza because, they have bad livers because they get these tattoos that are hard on the body. A lot of them use drugs intravenously when they're young because they do meth. Your liver problems are pretty dynamic. He had a terrible liver. He was dying. And Japan doesn't do any transplants, organ transplants at all, especially around 2000. Really? No, because there's been this resistance to doing it.
Why resistance?
It's sort of superstition about body cleanliness, and you're not wanting to have your not making it easy for people to donate organs, or the fear that you would have trafficking in organs or other things. Japan's just resistant to change. But anyway, so he's dying, and he basically approached the U.S. Embassy, and he said, I know you have problems getting information on the Yakuza, and if you will get me into the United States and get me a visa, I will give you all the information about the Yakuza that you could want, or the major groups.
Goto's telling them this.
Yeah, Goto's telling them this through an emissary politically connected to the U.S. Embassy. And here's the deal. This is why this is attractive to the FBI. I understand why they made this deal, at least with him. The National Police Agency at the time would not share information on Yakuza bosses and their names or their dates of birth because of personal privacy issues.
Oh, that's rich.
But what this means is if you want to track the Yakuza in your country, it's not enough to just know their name because there's so many Japanese names that are similar. You have to know the kanji.
The what?
The kanji, the Japanese characters, the Chinese characters. You could write Goto Tanamasa like 7 different ways.
Oh, I understand now. Okay.
So it's because there's a lot of homonyms in Japanese. Mm-hmm. So you need to know the kanji, you need to know the date of birth. Ideally, you want a photo. Now, all that information is contained by the National Police Agency, but the FBI doesn't have it. So they can't track these guys coming in and out of the country, and they want to because they don't want the Yakuza operating businesses in their place. And it's been a point of contention between the U.S. and Japan for years at this point.
Wow.
So Goto is coming in and is like, look, I have everything already set up at UCLA. I need to get there because I have to get a liver transplant. All I need is a visa. I don't want to be stopped at the border. And there was another Yakuza boss named Takumi Masaru who had liver problems, and he was going to get a liver transplant in France, and he got turned away at the border.
Oh, shit.
So he knows that this can happen, and he knows he's blacklisted because he's an infamous Yakuza. So he makes that deal with the FBI, and he rats out a certain percentage of his people, but he only gives the FBI like a 20% of what they want before he crosses over. And once he gets his liver transplant, he fucks them over. I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at the FBI, but once he gets his liver plants out, he disappears in the middle of the night back to Japan.
So he never gives them what they wanted.
No. So as Jim Stern, one of my favorite special agents, said, get the information first. That is informant 101. He said they should have dangled the fucking liver in front of him and says, you want this liver? Then you tell us everything now.
That's insane. The oversight right there.
Yeah.
I can't believe they let that happen.
So, but, meanwhile, the National Police Agency was just always keeping track of this guy, right? They wrote a stunning report of how he operates and his, his connections, his methods, his modus operandi. What's like a 67-page report. I have it. When I was writing about this guy and researching him, it was in addition to the leaked files from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. I feel like I probably know this guy better than I know some of my own relatives.
Yeah.
Anyway, when he left, and went to the airport and he gets on a plane to the United States and he doesn't get stopped. They were like, what the hell is going on? And of course, because he made that deal. So I think when the National Police Agency called me and said, we're putting you under police protection, I think that they were also like hoping, like, please write this up. And I remember
because you had that story,
and I had that story. I could not get it published in Japan. I had a Japanese weekly magazine that, I was sitting in a hotel room waiting for them to publish it. A little bit after midnight, the editor comes back and he says, "I'm sorry, we're not running it. We've just pulped the first printing and we're taking your story out."
What? Why?
Because people were afraid of him. Because he was like a Balkan gangster. He killed people. Or he didn't kill them themselves.
Yeah, he'd hand it off.
Off, and everyone was afraid of him.
How did you initially find out about the FBI angle to it again?
When you look at, when you looked at all the files that had been leaked and his passport numbers and when he traveled back and forth, there was one thing in there, and I can't go into details about that one thing other than the passport numbers because it would blow my source, who still is involved with federal law enforcement to some extent. I was like, okay, now I understand what's happened. The only way this could have happened is that the U.S. gave him permission to go.
Right.
And then I knew the person to talk to.
And then you hunted that down and figured out.
I hunted it down, wrote it up, waited to put it out in a book, and then I didn't think it would leak out, because I wouldn't say my publisher was stupid, but they weren't prudent. Sometimes you tell people something and you don't weigh the information so they don't realize that, you can't even hint that that's in the book.
Yeah. So you get the police protection when they put the English write-up of what to expect in the book up online.
And then someone, and I had friends in the police force because, I got along with these guys. And, they came in and they didn't give me many details. And we had a kind of a problem because they wanted to know exactly what was going on and what I knew. And I was kind of like, I can't tell you everything I know because I'll blow a source. So, so I'm sitting there having a cup of coffee, filling out some paperwork in the National Police Agency. This guy from Saitama, who occasionally people from the regional areas get transferred up to the National Police Agency, because the National Police Agency is kind of like the FBI, but except they don't really have the power to arrest people. That would require a lot more explanation. So I see this guy, and he's like, "Hey, he's like, Jake-san, like, I heard what's going on," and he's like, "Listen, maybe you know this or maybe you don't, but let me explain this to you. The only reason this guy has a reason to want you dead is because he thinks he can stop the story. But once you get it out, then you're a secondary issue. As a matter of fact, then he doesn't want anything to happen to you because it's probably going to be connected back to him." He says, "You're a writer. You need to write." And he said, also, if you think you're going to, you can outrun this and go home, like, you just take the trouble back to your family. You need to stay here and solve this. Get it published somewhere, anywhere, somewhere credible. He said, then it's not your problem anymore. Then it's his problem. And so I tried the Japanese press, fail. Like, I went, okay, clearly they don't have the balls to write this story up. And so Howard Rosenberg, who passed away recently, who was at 60 Minutes, knew my father from a story that he'd done years ago. And my father talked to Howard, and Howard's like, "This is a fascinating story. I'll put you in touch with an editor to the Washington Post." So I wrote it up for the Washington Post. And as I was writing it for the Washington Post, someone from the LA Times got a scent of what the story was about. And I was like, okay, I'll keep the hospital name out of the Washington Post article in exchange, and so we'll write it up for the LA Times, and I want to be credited. And they're like, we can't credit you. We can mention you in the article. And I'm like, that's fine. So Washington Post article came out. I got a lot of calls from friends in the Japanese press who were like, is there going to be a follow-up? And I'm like, there might be. And they're like, well, it's a very sensitive issue. And I'm like, I can guess that, so you're not going to write about it.
There.
But then the LA Times wrote it up, and in two parts, including the fact that Goto had donated $100,000 to UCLA after getting his liver transplant.
Oh, very nice of him.
Very nice of him, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I knew this too. There were 3 other Yakuza who had gotten liver transplants at UCLA, and they'd all suddenly, within weeks of arriving there, managed to get to the top of the list because, they were livers that nobody else wanted.
That's right.
It wasn't like Americans were being thrown under the bus.
Never.
We were waiting for a liver.
No, we would never do that.
It's not like, money changed hands so these guys got to the top of the list, right?
Yeah, for money, we wouldn't do that. No.
Not in our nonprofit medical service, right?
That's right.
Right. And one I think it was one wire service did an article. It went like this. According to an article in the Los Angeles Times, one of our most notorious gangsters made a deal with the FBI and got a liver transplant at UCLA, and so did these 3 other gangsters. And I was like, wow, I know the Japanese media can be gutless, but I never thought they would be that gutless. But that began the wheels of change that got him kicked out of the Yakuza. And once he was kicked out of the Yakuza, at some point, whatever offer there was to get me disappeared.
So he got kicked out.
Now,
how does that go down?
Goes down like this. The article comes out. He denies it. A couple months ago later, there's an article written about him going to having a lavish birthday party with celebrities instead of going to the monthly meeting of the Yamaguchi-gumi, which is a diss to the boss. Yeah, it is a diss. It is a diss.
Can't miss that.
It is possible that the person who wrote that article in Shukan Shincho might be someone I know very well, but that's always remained a mystery. So
not anymore, but okay.
But then a book came out about like the taboo stories of 2008, which had a detailed description of which Yakuza had gotten liver transplants and what Goto had offered up to get that liver transplant. And I was told that around October 14th, he was summoned to headquarters, and they told him, you have embarrassed the organization by, causing so much trouble to these celebrities. You've been insolent, and holding a copy of this book, which had all the details of his interactions with the FBI. The number 2 hit him on the head with the book and said, whether this is true or not, the fact that this is being written about you is a failure. You're out.
Oh, my God.
And they kicked him out.
But they didn't kill him.
They didn't kill him. He's too powerful to kill.
But he's not powerful enough to not get kicked out?
They had to they were worried. He had such a following and so much power and so much money.
I feel like it's the same thing.
No, they were like, the best thing to do is banish him.
So now he can be alive and plot his comeback with all his people.
Well, interestingly enough, after he got kicked out, there were a bunch of other bosses in the top 100 who sort of wrote a protest letter, and the response of the top management, was to kick all of them out.
Management.
Yeah. It's an executive structure. The management kicked out the other guys, and it was such a revolution, sort of this chain reaction of him getting fired and these other big Yakuza bosses getting fired, that they called it the Goto shock. Like in Japan, the collapse of Lehman Brothers is referred to the Lehman shock, like the financial crisis. So in the Yakuza world, it's referred to as the Goto shock.
But they fire or get rid of all these people who are loyal to him. How does this not cause a gang war?
Because they were very, very organized. I think actually around a year later.
So those people just stopped their rackets and they're like, oh, okay.
They got the rackets got taken over. Some of them got a retirement payment. Some of them were suspended. They were allowed to take some funds with them, keep their houses and stuff.
Okay.
I mean, the Yamaguchi-gumi, one of the things that has made this organization successful, there was a major split in the organization in the 90s between the Yamaguchi-gumi and the Ichiwakai. They split into two factions because basically there was a succession war of who should be the fourth generation leader. I know this sounds like inside baseball, but it's a split. It's a split.
Yeah.
Takenaka-san, who was the leader of the fourth generation leader, was assassinated coming out of his mistress's home. There was this huge period of sort of flux with no one in charge except the widow of the third generation leader. And as this gang war went on, the Yamaguchi-gumi decided that the best way to consolidate power and get people to come back was create a pension plan. So they created a pension plan.
A gangster pension plan.
Yeah. So if you, up until 2012, 2014, if you served out your time in the Yamaguchi-gumi, you got a pension when you left of anywhere between $200,000 to $500,000.
Oh, that's a nice fucking pension.
And one lump sum.
Oh, only once.
Yeah, only once.
All right, that's not that crazy.
Yeah. But I mean, if $500,000 can go a long way.
In Japan, maybe, right?
10 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's something.
So, so they're good at preserving the peace.
All right. So that just doesn't compute to me though, just because like I'm still thinking of it in levels of like how they would work here. In the mob, they wouldn't be like, "All right, you're going to Florida, Vinny."
Well,
It'd be like, "Oh, Vinny, let's get dinner," and he doesn't come back with his head.
If you kill him, you make him a martyr.
Yeah.
And you risk having the gang war that they don't want. Because then you have justification. So they let him live. I mean, he's not dumb. So, he's like, okay, what can I do to not get killed? So come around like 2010, very publicly, he announces, I'm going to become a Buddhist priest. And he invites all the press
Godo's going to become a Buddhist priest.
He becomes a Shingon Buddhist priest.
No, he didn't.
Different sect. Yes, he did. I interviewed his master, so to speak. So he becomes a Shingon Buddhist priest. He has a very, suddenly he's a Buddhist monk. Now you can't kill him, right? Even in Japan, when it's not very religious, it's a bad thing to kill a Buddhist monk.
Can't kill a monk.
And he's like, like now he's a good guy, right? He's
Did he shave his head and everything?
Yeah, he's forsaken his evil ways and that cheesy mustache.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here